Hey everyone, I'm Julian Shrago, brewmaster and co-owner of Beachwood Brewing in Southern California, and I'm here with your craft beer and brewing tip of the week. Another tip that I would recommend when doing a coffee infusion in a fermenter is get yourself a set of stainless steel ball valves. And because they're not bifurcated like a butterfly valve and that port opens up all the way, it's going to make dumping that coffee a lot easier. And in the case of Mocha Machine, we do a cocoa nib infusion as well. That happens after the coffee infusion. So coffee goes in, coffee comes out the next morning and is completely cleared from the fermenter. Then we set up a recirculation loop where we pull from the racking arm that's pointed straight up in the fermenter, and we reintroduce that beer through the bottom port of the fermenter. Once we get that recirculation going at a moderate pump speed, that's when we introduce the cocoa nibs. The beer has to be moving before you introduce those cocoa nibs because those things will sink faster than a bulldog in a lake without a life jacket. Is that a good analogy? Maybe. Anyway, you get the point. Get the recirculation loop going first and then introduce cocoa nibs, and then they will spin and infuse in the beer totally fine. We'll let that take place and circulate for 24 hours, and then the following morning we will come in, shut off that recirculation pump, and immediately rotate our racking arm 90 degrees so those cocoa nibs don't fall into the inverted racking arm and compact in there. So that's how we do the cocoa nib infusion. And another thing I think is great about doing a coffee infusion in a fermenter as opposed to sacks in a bright tank is having that coffee fall through the beer really ensures that you get full extraction and all those soluble components get pulled out of that beer. And one thing that we noticed when we started producing Mocha Machine at our production facility in bigger tanks is that that coffee takes a little bit longer to fall through a larger, taller tank as opposed to a small tank that we had at our brew pub. And we get more extraction out of that coffee. Not just flavor, not just aroma, but other saccharides and components in the coffee that add to the mouthfeel. So we found that Mocha Machine and really any coffee beer that we do at our production facility in larger, taller tanks came out richer and more fuller bodied. So that's another advantage that you can reap from infusing in a larger, taller tank. One place where I see people frequently go wrong with coffee beers is using under-roasted coffee or inappropriately over-roasted coffee. Both of those can bring flavor components that I find to be unpleasant, but I'm typically find an under-roasted coffee less enjoyable than an over-roasted coffee. I grew up drinking French roast from Pete's Coffee in the Bay Area, so I'm used to that strong stuff. But I think lighter roasts and medium roasts are a growing trend in many parts of the world and certainly in the United States. I think that can be taken a little bit too far, and I think if you're adding an under-roasted coffee to a beer, you're going to get a big vegetal component and you might quickly get that dreaded green bell pepper component in there. And this also underscores the importance that coffee is an ingredient and not an additive to beer. So if you want to go with a darker roast of coffee, if that's your preference, go for it. You are going to want to back off those dark roasted malts quite a bit in the base beer. You're not just going to get bitterness and roast from the coffee, you are also going to get a little bit of color too. And then hoppiness tends to kind of fight with some of that bitterness that roasted coffee brings. So you're going to want to back off the hoppiness quite a bit. Mocha Machine started out as a hoppier beer than it is now. Right now it sits right around 20 IBUs, which is not a lot for a beer that's right around 9% ABV. But that gives room for that coffee to bring some of that bitterness. And then the base beer is malty and balances out some of that roast and bitterness from the coffee with a little bit of sweetness. And additionally, the full body that's in Mocha Machine really kind of creates this saturated palate. So it's something that is distinctively beer, has a very distinctive prominent coffee component, but also saturates your palate in a way that's fully balanced. We do that by making sure that the coffee is an ingredient and not an additive, and that every other aspect of the beer makes room for that. To learn more about brewing award-winning beers in unfamiliar styles, click the link below.